It is Wednesday, November 13th, 2024 at Protestia Studios, and this is an intelligence briefing coming to you from protestia.com, where you can go to find the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. Sign up for our insurgency email blast and support us financially by becoming a Protestia insider over at patreon.com/Protestia, starting at only $5.95 a month, where you can get ad-free browsing of the articles we are going to outline in this intelligence briefing. Let's get into the headlines. First headline at protestia.com: Church founded in 1790 appoints disqualified first female pastor. A 230-year-old Pennsylvania church appointed its first female pastor in history, with the Reverend Carolyn C. Canvanis set to lead the historic congregation, according to a report by the Christian Post. Notably, the AME, which is the African Methodist Episcopal Church, was the first denomination founded on racial rather than theological grounds, resulting in Black liberation theology, a mainstay and foundationally taught belief at the denomination. The appointment is unlikely to rejuvenate the church, which has been dying for decades. Once having a membership of around 4,000 congregants, the church now draws around 100 to 150 people a week and skews much older. Canvanis has a bit of a history, which may be a feature for her and not a bug. In 2017, she was subject to public rebuke after she pleaded guilty to a single charge of making a false statement in a federal proceeding, according to Politico. Canvanis was working as a campaign staffer for a Democratic candidate who was fighting to unseat an incumbent. After contacting their opponent, Canvanis's candidate agreed to drop out of the primary for a surreptitious bribe of $90,000. As a result, she helped create false Federal Election Commission reports, far more than the $2,500 candidates are allowed to transfer at the time, and then lied about it. You can see more about this over at Protestia.com, including some stats about the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Next headline over at Protestia.com: retailer pulls a gay and a manger shirt after backlash. Shocking, I'm sure. A British online retailer has pulled a line of LGBTQ merchandise mocking Christians after receiving a wave of complaints and backlash. Former brick-and-mortar mainstay and now online-only retailer Debenhams decided to carry a line of merchandise from Grindcore, an alternative clothing brand. Late last week, one of their shirts went viral online, drawing enough complaints from Christian and conservative groups that the retailer pulled the shirt from its digital shelves. The shirt, which you can see in the picture to your right, I guess my left, had a caption, "Gay in a Manger," and featured LGBTQ-themed rainbow lights emitting from baby Jesus, suggesting the Lord was queer since birth. Remarking on the controversy, prominent former conservative MP and devout Roman Catholic Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg noted that Debenhams would not mock Islam in this way. No doubt. Read more over at Protestia.com. Next headline at Protestia: SBC pastor Matt Queen resigns from church after pleading guilty in an FBI investigation. A month after pleading guilty to one charge and making false statements to the FBI, former professor and interim provost at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, Matthew Queen, has resigned from his pastorate at Friendly Avenue Baptist Church in Greensboro, North Carolina. Earlier this year, the DOJ indicted Queen on charges of obstructing justice, with FBI Assistant Director in charge James Smith explaining that Queen had, failed to inform the FBI of a conspiracy to destroy evidence related to the ongoing investigation of sexual misconduct, and instead provided falsified notes to investigators. So yeah, lying is in this way, deceiving in this way is certainly a sin. You can read more about this at protestia.com. There's a lot more that we could potentially say about the situation, but we will leave it up to you to interpret. We do have a press release from the church, Friendly Avenue Baptist Church, where it talks about Dr. Matthew Queen stepping down from his role as lead pastor at the church effective immediately. While this has been a challenging season, we continue to trust in God's sovereignty and remain focused on our mission. As we move forward, we encourage our congregation and the wider community to stay focused on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. The sentencing guidelines seem to indicate he's probably going to be facing 1 to 3 years. But you can read more about it over at protestia.com. Next headline at protestia.com, the Insider Roundtable is launching Thursday. That's tomorrow. Protestia is excited to announce a new benefit for insider supporters, the Insider Roundtable, where myself and JD Hall lead a discussion on current pertinent issues for the discerning Christian. Formerly the Bulldogmatic Bible Study and available to second tier and above supporters, the Insider Roundtable is now open to all patrons, $5.95 a month and up. We released a Protestia Tonight. I recorded a Protestia Tonight episode about this specifically that you can find on podcatchers and places around if you follow Protestia Tonight with your favorite podcatching program. It's available on Spotify and iTunes and pretty much everywhere else that you would find podcasts, iHeartRadio and whatnot, to explain the changes that we're making over at Protestia, which we think will be beneficial to everybody for our time to be more effective and for our information sent to you to be more effective. But if you want to listen to more of the details, that's in the latest Protestia Tonight, or sign up over at patreon.com/Protestia and join us tomorrow night for the inaugural Insider Roundtable. We're going to be discussing the dust up and our thoughts and some of our thoughts about what's happened with the latest dust up with German pastor Tobias Riebenschneider, I believe is how he pronounces it, and Texas pastor Joel Webbin. We're going to be discussing some of the in and outs of that situation in our first Insider Roundtable tomorrow night. Head over to protestia.com for the links to get over to Patreon and subscribe now. Next headline at protestia.com, new rule evangelicals who oppose Trump don't get to counsel him. This an op-ed from JD Hall over at Protestia. Woke evangelicals who have opposed Donald Trump every step of the journey are busy trying to offer advice to the new regime. Don't let them. This is a well worth your time to read, and we would heartily commend you to head over to Protestia and read this op-ed. I'm not going to read the whole thing on the intelligence briefing, but you can find it at protestia.com. Next headline at Protestia, Church of England head Justin Welby resigns in shame after sex abuse cover-up. The head of the Church of England and the entire global Anglican community, Justin Welby, has resigned from his position after investigation found he failed to inform police about a serial sex abuser who'd made Anglican church camps his hunting ground. Welby, who led 85 million Anglicans in 165 countries as the Archbishop of Canterbury, has been under pressure to resign since the summer, not because he's been eagerly cheerleading the denomination to support gay marriage, gingerly holding her hand as she descends into wokeness and sin, but rather because a recent report, which took 5 years to publish, concluded the church leadership had failed to warn law enforcement and other members about the predations of John Smith, might be John Smythe, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, a monstrous old pedophile who died in 2018 after molesting and physically abusing hundreds of boys over 5 decades. Welby said in a statement he was deeply sorry the abuse had happened and sorry that in places where these young men and boys should have felt safe and where they should have experienced God's love for them, they were subjected instead to physical, sexual, and psychological and spiritual abuse. He says he is sorry that concealment by many people who were fully aware of the abuse over many years meant that John Smith was able to abuse overseas and died before he ever faced justice. The report rightly condemns that behavior, and then Welby stated he had no idea or suspicion of this abuse before 2013. Okay. Well, you can read more about this over at protestia.com, where we have also listed some of the key findings of this 5 years in the waiting report on the abuse of John Smith, or Smythe, one of the two. Next headline at protestia.com, Netflix's upcoming biblical epic Mary will be very, very, very Roman Catholic. As far as we can tell, Netflix just dropped the trailer for Mary, a coming-of-age biblical epic that tells the story of one of history's most profound figures and the remarkable journey that led to the birth of Jesus. That, according to their quote, directed by DJ Caruso, a devout Roman Catholic. The film's copy reads, and you can see it on the screen, chosen to bring the Messiah into the world, Mary is shunned following a miraculous conception and forced into hiding. When King Herod orders a murderous hunt for a newborn baby, Mary and Joseph go on the run, bound by faith and driven by courage to save his life at all costs. Well, there's already a few small errors even in that description. You can head over to Protestia to see the trailer if you are interested in seeing what's going on. But suffice to say, we're assuming that the show is going to, it's going to have some issues. Certainly, if it follows the Roman Catholic beliefs about Mary, it will have a whole host of errors and issues. But we'll see, I suppose. Last headline for this intelligence briefing: federal judge halts Louisiana law requiring classrooms to display the 10 Commandments. A federal judge has decided a newly passed Louisiana law mandating that every classroom display the 10 Commandments is, quote, coercive and, quote, unconstitutional, and has blocked it from going into effect. Earlier this year, Republican Governor Jeff Landry signed a bill that takes effect on January 1st, 2025, requiring every public school to have a visible display, at least 11 by 14 inches size, that showcases the 10 Commandments. The display must also include a statement of context explaining the prominent and historical role these commandments played in the country's legal and education system. So it sounds like in schools they are requiring, education, because it's very clear that the 10 Commandments and God's immutable moral law, the second table specifically, heavily influenced and informed our current system of laws, our current legal system, and our current form of government. But apparently a judge thinks otherwise. You can see on the screen here, this is Attorney General Liz Murrill, I'm not sure how she pronounces it, over in Louisiana, saying that we strongly disagree with the court's decision and will immediately appeal as HB 71's implementation deadline is approaching on January 1st, 2025. School boards are independently elected local political subdivisions in Louisiana. Only 5 school boards are defendants. Therefore, the judge only has jurisdiction over these 5. This is far from over. You can read more about this over at Protestia.com. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of the Intelligence Briefing for Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Stay tuned to Protestia for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. We'll see you again next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.